There was a commentary published this week in the New England Journal of Medicine that got you pretty riled up, Mike, and it brought up the concept of variolation and how it relates to COVID-19 and masks. So can you explain what your issues are with this piece?
Well, I can't imagine this audience would ever think of me getting riled up. I was very riled up. I can think of only a couple of times in my 45-year career when I felt that an article published in a medical journal was irresponsible and even dangerous. And I think this one was. We're working to respond back to this article. The title was Facial Masking for COVID-19, Potential for Variolation as We Wait a Vaccine. For those that don't remember, variolation was the process of, in the old days, of taking someone with smallpox and actually taking a pustule from someone with smallpox and basically scratching the arm and putting that on that person's arm, with them then getting a mild case of smallpox. It was not inhaled. It was not the big dose that got in there. And while some people still died from this, many were protected against the severe form of smallpox. Well, this paper by Monica Gandhi and George Rutherford basically was a whole series of kind of what ifs. And what they hypothesized is that if you wore a face cloth covering, although they called it a mask, they didn't really define what they were talking about, that you had a lesser dose inhaled of the virus, and you then had mild to asymptomatic disease, but then developed protection. And there's not a lick of data in here that supports this concept at all. And the reason I'm so concerned is that, in fact, if I were to read this or to hear about this as someone, I might say, wow, you know what? I'm just going to go out into public with my face cloth covering on, and I'm not going to distance. I'm going to go right up with everybody, because tonight might be the lucky night I get infected with this mild virus level, and therefore now I'm protected. Couldn't be more dangerous to make that point. I would just say, in short, we've gone through this at length. They make statements about lower dose. They have no clue what they're talking about. There's no dosage data in here. We're doing the work right now looking at infectious doses. You know, we've been working with the animal model people to look at what this is. And we're looking at a likely median infectious dose in humans for this virus, which probably is somewhere in the order of 10 to the 2, which is very, very, very low. And that's just to infect people. That doesn't say a lower dose. We've also seen that there is no evidence that dose in animal studies actually affect their outcome. Either they differ by age or the genetics and the comorbidities of the animals. So if you take old macaques with diabetes and overweight and infect them with a low dose, they still come down with very, very serious disease, where young macaques, even when healthy ones with higher doses, still have this very mild, if asymptomatic, infection. So the dose may be actually even less important than just who the individual is that's getting infected. This paper had no sense of how well a face cloth covering actually reduces inhalation. We know, and you've heard me talk about this before, our concerns about the issues of aerosols and how they are inhaled in and how they're exhaled out. And then they cited studies using hamsters for which they actually misinterpreted the information and made it seem like somehow the dosage being delivered to these hamsters would actually show that the hamsters who got less really had less illness. And in fact, it had to do with airflow. It had to do with many other things. So my worst concern is that this paper will lead people to actually let down their guard. They won't distance, and we're going to see many more infections. If there was some data in here that supported this in a way that would say, well, we need to look at this, that's great. But this was just absolutely irresponsible. And I don't say that lightly. You know me well enough on here, but I think that the New England Journal has a lot of explaining to do, and I plan, as do some of my colleagues, addressing that with them, because it surely gives the public the wrong idea. There is no data to support this concept at all is a reality.